C.J. Stroud and Isiah Pacheco are sneaky good plays this week. We get into the best sleepers and DFS plays for week 7 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today, we are going to get into our favorite sleepers of the week at each position. We will both give you our favorite guy at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And then we'll get into our daily fantasy football talk. So if you like to play FanDuel or PrizePicks or any of that stuff, we have our favorite plays of the week that we'll get to later on in today's episode. Let's start with our favorite quarterback sleeper of the week. Vinny, who do you got?
Yeah, I think we're both going a little bit against the grain based on maybe just the way things are playing out with these matchups. But I like Trevor Lawrence in London. So get up early and get him in your lineup there if you're going to stream quarterbacks against the Rams. Now, the Rams are a tough defense. They're young, they're rising, they're coming up here. And Trevor Lawrence's numbers haven't been all that pretty. But there's some signs that things are coming together slowly in Liam Cohen's offense. And I say slowly because it's a bit complicated and it's going to take some time to just get everyone on the same page. But Brian Thomas Jr. has started to emerge. Trevor Lawrence plays his best football, save for his rookie season, in London for some reason. He called it his second home earlier this week. So he's excited to play there. I think he's going to have a big game. The Rams are coming in a bit reeling, right, with the lost potentially Puka Nacua. They were good last week, but didn't totally obliterate the Ravens like we saw. So I think they're due for a little bit of a drop down here. And given what we've seen, look, any team can reverse fortunes very quickly, and what we think is going to happen can turn around pretty quickly. Look at the Steelers-Bengals game. That you think one thing is going to go one way, and then it's going to go the other. So you got to go by situation, motivation, some of these intangibles that are at work as well. So that's why I like Trevor Lawrence this week. I think he's going to do whatever he can, throwing and running, to get the job done. So I think this could be very much like the Chiefs game. I think he might be a guy that, the old cliche, getting up for better teams. I think he's one of those guys who do that. Like in bigger games against better teams, he shows up, and sometimes he struggles in matchups where we think, it's right there for him. So I really like Trevor Lawrence to do some damage here in London against the Rams.
All right. My sleeper of the week at quarterback will be C.J. Stroud against the Seahawks. It is on the road, but C.J. Stroud and this Texans offense have come alive over their last 2 games before their weeks expire. Stroud has 6 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 47 fantasy points over his previous 2 games combined. While the last 2 quarterbacks to face the Seahawks, Baker Mayfield scored 27 fantasy points against them. Trevor Lawrence scored 19 points against them. And they're dealing with so many injuries in their secondary with Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, and Julian Love, all questionable to play in week 7. So the one worry is that the Seahawks, pass rush could beat up on the Texans offensive line. If the offensive line could just be mediocre and don't ruin this game, I think C.J. Stroud has a really solid fantasy day.
Yeah, there's another avenue to that as well. I mean, if the Seahawks move the ball here in this game and be in good position, where I don't think the Texans are going to be able to run much from Seattle, so the volume is going to be there, throw to the backs and tight ends, as well as Nico Collins playing in this game. So I think he can get there, compile the numbers he needs there. It's not going to be necessarily pretty, but he can definitely get there against the Seahawks. Now, let's turn to my running back sleeper. It is Jordan Mason. Now, I forgot about Jordan Mason. The Vikings were on a bye last week. He's still there. I mean, Aaron Jones is still on the shelf. I mean, I know they've been trying to incorporate other backs into this mix, but he's still the guy here. And the Eagles haven't been all that great against the run. I know we'll see about Jalen Carter. I'm not exactly sure what they are doing up front because they're not having a lot of success. So, again, you can run on the Eagles and keep things interesting against them. And Mason is going to get a pretty high volume because I don't think they want to just put Carson Wentz / JJ McCarthy if the latter happens in harm's way against the Eagles, because they still have Vic Fangio and some guys who can rush the passer and create some problems in coverage. So I think they need to run the ball, and Jordan Mason is going to be a big part of that. Also helps keep the Eagles offense off the field in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think Jordan Mason is a solid start this week. My sleeper of the week at running back will be Isiah Pacheco against the Raiders. I know he's done absolutely nothing this year, but I think last week showed us some promise that he could start scoring some fantasy points. He was on the field for 77% of the Chiefs' offensive snaps and led the backfield with 12 carries. Those were both season highs. From weeks 1 through 5, he was on the field for just 52% of the time and averaging just 7.8 carries per game. But I think the most enticing thing is that he started to be utilized in the red zone this last week. He had 4 red zone carries. He was on the field for 9 of the red zone snaps when he had only 3 red zone carries throughout the whole season from weeks 1 through 5. And then also never played more than 3 snaps in the red zone in any game until week 6 when he played 9. So they're starting to utilize him in that area, which I think is huge because the Raiders have allowed the 3rd most rushing touchdowns to running backs this year. Over the last 3 weeks, running backs have scored 6 rushing touchdowns against the Raiders. So I think Isiah Pacheco can actually have a solid fantasy game for the first time this season.
Yeah, I actually like Hunt and Pacheco in this game. I think they can really kind of control the action. I just like a lot of the Chiefs. I just think this is a terrible matchup all around for the Raiders. So it really is who gets the touchdowns here among their group. I mean, when you include the right wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. But I think there's going to be plenty of touchdowns to go around, and there's a good chance Pacheco scored. He scored out of receiving ball just a couple weeks ago as well. So that's a good sign. Now, I've got a wide receiver that has a really good matchup this week, and it tends to be every other week with him, with the numbers that he puts up. It's Stefon Diggs of the Patriots. He gets one of the best matchups you can in fantasy. It's against Jalen Armour Davis, probably, for the Titans. He's a really bad corner. I mean, you probably only heard of him because he has 3 names, but he's not very good. He just gives up a lot downfield. The Patriots offense is being very aggressive all of a sudden with Josh McDaniels and Drake May. Diggs just a couple weeks ago had that massive game against the Bills. He was quieter last week as Quinshon Judkins, Demario Douglas, and some of the other weapons took center stage. But now it's his turn again. It seems like every other week for him. Odd weeks for Stefon Diggs, but the matchup lines up really well in Tennessee in this matchup. So I like Stefon Diggs to be the main guy here all over the field for Drake May in that really great matchup.
Yeah, he went down a little bit last week, kind of disappeared, but he was doing really well the 2 weeks before that, and we expect Drake May to have a big game. So I like that. Now, my sleeper of the week at wide receiver goes with my quarterback sleeper. It's Christian Kirk of the Texans against the Seahawks secondary that I already mentioned is very banged up. Again, I expect C.J. Stroud to have a good game. Now, yeah, Nico Collins is the guy I think he's going to have the best game with, right? But there's also room for Kirk to put together like a top 30 fantasy performance. Last week, or the last game before their bye, he did have a season high 64 receiving yards. He scored 10.4 fantasy points. Obviously, nothing super exciting, but the Seahawks have allowed the 5th most receiving yards and tied for the 2nd most receiving touchdowns to slot receivers this season. So this is a good matchup for Christian Kirk, and I think he's starting to get more involved in the offense. I like him a lot more in like full PPR leagues, but I think he's a viable option this week if you need someone with buys or injury that you can grab off the waivers.
Yeah, I mean, he has as good a chance as any to be the second guy behind Nico Collins in that matchup. Dalton Schultz also has a pretty good matchup in that one. So, again, these things can all add up to good things for C.J. Stroud and Michelle's sleeper stack that she has with Stroud and Kirk this week. Now, tight end was hard because I was going to pick through a bunch of guys. Now, look, this is a time of year, really, those tight end points against stats. I mean, all you need to know about these stats being very good indication of what's going to happen is what the Steelers did to the Bengals. I mean, Jonnu Smith scores early. Pat Freiermuth drops 100 and scores as well. Like, this tells you everything you need to know. If the team is bad against a tight end, they usually do not fix it. A team that's bad against a tight end, the Carolina Panthers. Now, I actually thought about the Jets on the other side as well for a sleeper because Jatavion Sanders looks like he'll return for the Panthers. So it's an extra weapon that's good for Bryce Young for trying to stream him this week. But Mason Taylor was a preferred one. I went for the easy one here. Garrett Wilson not going to play with that hip injury. You got Justin Fields in there. Mason Taylor has to get a lot of targets. It just has to happen. I mean, it's not going to be the Josh Reynolds show. I mean, come on. Like, forcing the ball to Reynolds was painful enough in that game against the Broncos. It did them no favors. Taylor, let's go. I mean, he's a guy that tends to play better at home. He probably has his dad in the stands, so that's always great for him. So I'm going to Mason Taylor. I think this is a layup, I think, for a sleeper this week. I don't know how much upside he has, but I think he's a passable guy that you can play here if you're trying to fill in for Dalton Kincaid or if you had one of the Ravens tight ends.
Now, my sleeper at tight end is Harold Fannin Jr., the rookie for the Browns against the Dolphins. David Njoku is not expected to play this Sunday. He hasn't practiced all week with the hyperextended knee. This should give Harold Fannin even more opportunity, and he already saw a career-high 10 targets and 81 receiving yards last week. In the 2 games that he has played with Dillon Gabriel as a starter, Fannin has scored 11.3 and 15.1 fantasy points. And the Dolphins have allowed at least 11 fantasy points to 3 tight ends over the last 4 weeks. And that's Dalton Kincaid, Mason Taylor, and Aronde Gradison. I don't even know if I said that right, of the Chargers. But like, Fannin should get a lot of opportunity. It's supposed to be a bad weather game, so some shorter passes should be going to the tight ends and running backs. So I really like Harold Fannin Jr. this week.
Yeah, it's a Rondé Gadsden the second, so let's get him out there. Like, I actually, Michelle is probably not old enough, but I did play his dad in fantasy at times for the Dolphins, so the same name dad, so I remember him. So that tells you a little bit about how long I've been playing fantasy, but yeah, I played his dad before in fantasy. But yeah, I don't think you played Harold Fannin's dad, but you can play Harold Fannin the son this week, and Jason Taylor's son as well. So we like those picks here. Now we'll get into our fun PrizePicks picks of the week after this quick break.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and this year we're saying thank you to therapists. Life can be tough on and off the field, and behind millions of mental health journeys are therapists who showed up, listened, and helped people take a step forward. BetterHelp is shining the spotlight on those connections while also making it simple for you to find support whenever you need it. Therapy moments can be life-changing, whether it's learning to better connect with your kids, healing a relationship, or finding healthy ways to manage stress. I know that when something's weighing on me, just talking it through can bring clarity and relief. If you ever thought about trying therapy, this is the perfect reminder that help is out there and the right therapist can make it all the difference. This World Mental Health Day, join us in celebrating the therapists who helped millions take a step forward. If you're ready to start your own journey, BetterHelp can help you find the right therapist. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. It's super quick and easy, and you can make your lineup in under a minute. The best part is that PrizePicks just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a specific player that you love this week, you could select their passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And the reboot feature is so important. It's incredible. Other, apps like this do not offer the reboot. So if a player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So you don't have to worry about injuries. And there's a special max discount promotion live on the board right now for Golden State Warriors, the Lakers game on October 21st. Steph Curry is discounted to only needing more than half of a point to win. So you can mix that with football, basketball, and baseball to build your dream lineup today. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKDOWNNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKDOWNNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, after just telling you how to sign up for PrizePicks, we're going to give you our favorite PrizePicks picks of the week. We'll each give our top 3. Vinny, what's your favorite one this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that Lions-Buccaneers game, and you definitely want to have a piece of that because it
Mm.
should be one of the higher scoring games. Look, Jahmry Gibbs hasn't been catching the ball the way we thought and being used as a weapon in that way, but the Bucks, they're hard to run on straight up through the middle, right? And they're a hard team because they got Vita Vea and they get some beefy dudes there. So I think they need to get Jahmyr Gibbs extended out into space. And I'm really surprised his receiving usage has been the one disappointing factor, right? Even in the games where he is not produced as well on the ground, that used to be his thing that would put up the numbers. Now, so you look at Gibbs, 22 and a half receiving yards against the Buccaneers. This game's at home. They like to get him going on the Ford Field, fast surface there, get him an open field, and that's a good way to beat the Bucks this week. So I'm going with that here. It's a very low number, surprising to me, but 22 and a half receiving yards. I think he could get this in one or two catches here, get him in the open field, make some big plays again. We need this. And I think this is a Jahmyr Gibbs going back to a big game back at home.
See, my guy is also a Lions player against the Buccaneers. I'm going with Sam LaPorta, more than 11 fantasy points, and fantasy points on the PrizePick app is full PPR scoring format. So over the last 2 weeks, Sam LaPorta has scored 36.7 fantasy points with 17.7 points and 14 points over the last 2 games. And the Buccaneers have been, giving up points to tight ends as of late. Over the last 3 games, they allowed A.J. Barner to score 24 fantasy points against them, Dallas Goedert to hit 20 points, and Jake Tonjes to hit 11.8. So all 3 of those over the last 3 weeks have hit over 11 fantasy points against the Buccaneers. And I think Sam LaPorta is the best tight end out of that group, right? So I'm fully expecting him to have a really solid game this week and hopefully get into the end zone yet again.
Yeah, what we're hoping for is the big four all going off here. That's LaPorta and St. Brown and Gibbs and Williams and then a little bit of Montgomery. We want the whatever you call it with 5 guys scoring. I think it could all happen here against the Buccaneers because wherever the Buccaneers go, high scoring games follow. So it's a good to attach ourselves to the Lions twice here. Now, I do have my quarterback rushing pick of the week. Now, this quarterback actually has not run as much as people might think here. That's kind of curbed his fantasy potential here in recent weeks because Jonathan Taylor is doing all the damage. But it's Daniel Jones. He has gone up and down, right? They haven't used him as much. And it's not like the Giants where that was the only thing he had to manufacture offense with his legs, right? He was just a guy that took off and ran whenever to put up numbers. So here's a little bit more calculated when you have Jonathan Taylor. That's going to be the way of it. But the Chargers do give up quite a bit here of rushing yardage to quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is down to 17 and a half. So rushing yards. So his number's pretty low here to take advantage of. He did have 20 last week. So taking advantage of the Cardinals. I think the Chargers have a similar defense where they could turn around and give some open room here for Daniel Jones with worrying about the deep ball a little bit and worrying about Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren and Jonathan Taylor. So I think you definitely get that here from Daniel Jones. Look, we only need 20 again, and I think you'll get there.
Now, my next one is Quinshon Judkins, more than 20 and a half rushing attempts against the Dolphins. This is pretty high, but his rushing yards were really high as well. It was like 95 and a half. So I'm going to go with his rushing attempts so I don't have to worry about his efficiency. And he did not hit it in week 6. He only had 12 carries, but they got blown out by the Steelers. But in the 2 games prior to that, he had 21 carries on the road in Detroit and then 23 carries in week 5 at home or against the Vikings in that London game. But I just in this game, it's expected to be very rainy, very windy. I expect the Browns defense to be able to shut down the Dolphins since they're playing at home. And in that case, they're just going to have to run a ton. So I think Judkins gets 21 or more rushing attempts in this game.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then the Browns can feel good about that because they're probably going to win the game against the Dolphins. So the volume is going to really dictate how they play. And the one thing is, let's hope the Dolphins make a few stops so he's not getting to 100 yards and like 17 carries or something.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that could stop that. But I do think the volume has to be there. He's the bread and butter of what they're trying to do now with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. Now, I'm going Devontae Adams. This is the one I'm a little bit not feeling the yardage. So I had to go with the receptions here. Like yardage was pretty high. It was above 70 and like, that's a little too high for me. And he's been making catches, but not necessarily the volume we expect. But I think the volume could come here without Puka Nacua. And there 5.5 receptions is the number for Davante Adams, more than against the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars secondary, look, Travis Hunter still getting his bearings here. We made a trade to get rid of Tyson Campbell. So I don't know what you're going to get here from the secondary, but I know they'll let Adams get open a few times. He's also been stretching the field a little bit more for Matthew Stafford. If you look at his yards per catch, they're going to need him all over the field here. Stafford, again, without Nacua, is probably going to pepper a lot of those targets toward Adams. No offense to Tutu Atwell or Jordan Whittington or whoever else that they would put there. But Tyler Higbee and Adams are probably going to see the most targets on this team without Nacua. So I'm going there. Adams can get 8 targets. I think we're good for the 6 receptions there with Davante Adams against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I love that receptions. You don't have to worry about the efficiency. I like that a lot. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see double-digit targets for Adams this week. My last one is Courtland Sutton, more than 12 fantasy points against the Giants. Sutton has scored 17 or more fantasy points in 4 of 6 games this season and 18-plus points in both of his home games. While the Giants have allowed 9 different wide receivers to score at least 12 fantasy points against them over the first 6 weeks, at least one wide receiver in all 6 games had at least 12 fantasy points. So I think this number is too low for him. I think Sutton has a great game against the Giants, so I'm definitely taking that.
Yeah, I love that for sure. I mean, Sutton, again, he might pop up later in the show when we get into some other things here, including our lineups for FanDuel. So I'm excited about that. But I think those picks are really going to do well and hit for you. So check those out. But you can make your own prize picks as well. Do it your way and then get into the NBA as well. So thanks, Michelle, for telling us how to play. And those are the piece of advice you need to know for NFL Week 7. We will get into those FanDuel lineups. We'll reveal those. We haven't talked about those at all. We'll do that here in our final segment on Locked On Fantasy Football for the week. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Mazda. And Mazda, look, Mazda's crafting cars for those who do more and then simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. That's as of August 2025. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls with all-wheel drive standard, every crossover SUV you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players in fantasy football, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is also brought to you by Rougiette. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra, Cialis, or maybe you even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. That's where Rougiette Go Long comes in. This is just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for your confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-infused medications with 1 dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online and prescribe. Your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Prescribe your treatment will be right there for you in a couple days. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rougiette.com. That's Rugiet. Rougiette.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. Again, that's Rougiette, Rugiet.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure you use our code so they know that we sent you. All right, Michelle, it is time to close the show and time to reveal our FanDuel lineups here for Week 7 and the main slate. So, Michelle, I'll let you go first. What is your quarterback selection?
So this is a weird one for me because I'm not normally on him, but I am going to go with Bo Nix against the Giants because I do expect the Broncos to be able to put up a lot of points. against this Giants defense at home this week, and he was a good price at 7,100. And I said, I love Courtland Sutton. So that's my stack this week. It's Bo Nix with Courtland Sutton at wide receiver.
All right, let's get this out of the way. I usually don't play this quarterback either, but I also played Bo Nix this week, and my stack is with Courtland Sutton. So we're practicing what we're preaching here, folks. We really like the Nix-Sutton combination this week. They're at home. Nix is better at home. Sutton is better at home. Everything is better at home. The matchup is pristine against the Giants. So, yeah, that's my stack of the week, as well as Michelle's here. Bo Nix at 7,100, by the way, and Courtland Sutton at 7,700. So, Michelle, might as well reveal your running backs now.
I'm going with Quinshon Judkins. Brought it up that I think he's going to get at least 20 carries this week and be heavily involved. And the Dolphins defense stinks. So I paid up for him, I guess, somewhat, but he was at 7,400, so nothing crazy. And then Isiah Pacheco, who's my sleeper of the week. I went cheap on him at 6,000 against the Raiders. Raiders giving up a ton of rushing touchdowns, like I said. So I expect Pacheco to be more involved this week, get some yards on the ground, and actually score his first rushing touchdown of the year.
Yeah, I do like both those picks because I have one of them in my lineup. It's Quinshon Judkins. You're right. I mean, the price is too good. The volume is going to be there. The matchup is very good. So I'm going there. I thought about Pacheco, but then I changed things around at the last minute. And I went with Josh Jacobs. I know he's battling an illness, but he should be there to carry the load against the Cardinals. I mean, I think this is going to be a heavy running game, defense game. So if you want to play the Packers defense, you can. I did not. But you look at Jacobs, again, he should have a steady workload here against the Cardinals and totally smash that front. Again, easy victory for Green Bay, and a lot of it is going to be Jacobs running.
Yeah, Jacobs has just been a beast lately. It's scoring so much. He should have another great game. My other two wide receivers go along with Courtland Sutton are Rome Odunze against the Saints. Nice matchup for him there. Down week for him in week 6, but I think he bounces back in this matchup. Paid 7,800 for him. And then Quentin Johnson, who is off the injury report. He doesn't have an injury designation going into the weekend. He was at 7,200. I think people are like overlooking him a little bit. He was such a beast the first 4 weeks of the season. Week 5, a little bit low, and then week 6, he missed. But I love the matchup against the Colts. I expect it to be a very high-scoring game, so I wanted a piece of that game.
Yeah, I also went for that game, but I went for the different wide receiver. I'm going to Ladd McConkey. I think he's getting warmed up. He has a pretty good matchup here all over the field against the Colts secondary. So I like that. Let's hope both of these guys go off for us this week and get the job done. And Keenan Allen is the odd man out, is what we're hoping for. And then Stefon Diggs is my pick. I liked him, again, as a sleeper. The matchup is very good downfield. And so that's where I kind of pivoted instead of having Pacheco in my lineup. I went a little bit cheaper with Diggs there at wide receiver and getting Jacobs in the lineup as well.
Now, I'll say this lineup is incredibly Broncos heavy. So if the Broncos don't kill this game exactly how I'm thinking, it's going to be bad for this lineup because I have J.K. Dobbins in my flex. I went to the flex. I had room to pay, around this price, and J.K. Dobbins was by far the best value. I think, I do think there's room for Bo Nix, J.K. Dobbins, and Courtland Sutton all to have good games. But it is a little scary, right? Like I'm going to need J.K. Dobbins to get into the end zone, maybe through the air. That would be kind of great for Bo Nix. But then also for my defense, I'm going with the Broncos. Clearly expect the Broncos to beat up on the Giants. So their defense was actually priced like middle of the pack for whatever reason. So at 4,300 there, I went with the Broncos defense.
All right. At tight end, I went back to the Tucker Kraft well because, again, those numbers against the tight end are very reliable. They're starting to become reliable. I think he'll have another solid game and find the end zone against the Cardinals here this week. My defense is the Chiefs because, again, I think they should crush the Raiders. And Geno Smith has been a turnover machine of late. So I think some Chiefs big play sacks and maybe a touchdown are coming in that matchup. And then I went interesting with my flex. I looked at what I had left, and I had just enough money for Mason Taylor. So welcome to the 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets with Mason Taylor and Tucker Kraft. What I like about Taylor's value is 4,700. So if I can get their 13.1 points, I'm in business here with Mason Taylor, and I think he can do that if he gets a touchdown. Same thing with Tucker Kraft. I think I can get to 18.9 with him with some volume and a touchdown in that game. So that's what I'm looking for. The 3x return is really what you're looking for, mainly if you're playing cash games, but it can pay off as well in tournaments as well. So I do like it. Taylor, again, it was a good value there over like forcing a wide receiver that was not going to get a lot of looks at 4,700.
Yeah, my tight end was Harold Fannin Jr. I went with my sleeper tight end of the week, cheap at 5,500. Expect him to be utilized a ton in this game without David Njoku. Nice matchup against the Dolphins. So to go through my lineup again, I have Bo Nix at quarterback, Quinshon Judkins and Isiah Pacheco with J.K. Dobbins in my flex for my running backs, Courtland Sutton, Rome Odunze, and Quentin Johnston as my 3 wide receivers, and then Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end with the Broncos defense.
All right, my lineup is Bo Nix, just like Michelle's quarterback, and then Courtland Sutton is the stack with Ladd McConkey and Stefon Diggs as my other wide receiver plays. Quinshon Judkins, we both also have in our lineup as well with Sutton and Nix, Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, Mason Taylor, going the unusual 2 tight end route, and then the Chiefs defense.
That will be it for today's episode. That's it for our preparation for week 7. We hope you all get your win in your fantasy football leagues and in your DFS lineups. We will be back on Monday to discuss those week 7 games. Have a great weekend. Bye, y'all.